Now, if you had to go on site to pull out a standard 8-inch turbine or an 8-inch subby, how much difference in the time that you spend in pulling that out to do a clean? The clean, I imagine, is very similar.
It's not as much to clean as submersible. So that rising main or the columns in the turbine, the rising main on a submersible, it's just a stain. It hasn't got any build up on it at all. In the turbine, everywhere there's a bearing retainer, where the water changes direction, that's where it builds up. So, and then once it starts to build up at the bearing retainer, well, it builds up underneath. So I could probably go out and service a submersible for iron bacteria 2 or 3 hours. Turbine, probably 2 days.
It's quite a big investment in maintenance.
When you go with the turbine, people tend to go, oh, I'll leave it a bit longer, I'll leave it a bit longer, I'll leave it a bit longer. When it's only a couple of 2 or 3 hours or whatever, just get the contractor out to do that next time, you know, I finish watering it.
Yes, because a much lower investment cost in doing that.
By a long way. And look, I agree, turbines are the way to go in good water, but when we start talking about not so good a water, I still think a submersible's got a place. There is another thing and a good reason why you should try and clean your bores out a lot more often. There's a thing in the vertic in some areas called manganese, and manganese is very hard to get rid of. It gets really hard and crusty, and it's really hard to get rid of.
So we have this manganese, and there's other things which
and then
precipitate
the iron
it.
bacteria likes to stick to the manganese because it's very rough, and it tends to, they're not a good thing to have together. So again, if you let that bore go and go and go, it virtually becomes impossible to get rid of that manganese, where if you sort of tend to stay on top of it, I won't say that you're not going to have to drill a new hole in the future, but you're going to prolong the length of life of that bore by doing that.
So that manganese does a similar thing in actually binding to the screen, the outside of the screen there, and clogging up those apertures. So those little holes where the water's coming through get smaller and smaller, which means the velocity going through has to increase to maintain that flow.
And then you've got the iron bacteria. And unfortunately, manganese and iron bacteria a lot of times go hand in hand.
So what might you do to treat the manganese?
Do it more often. So like I'm saying,
same type of maintenance.
Do your maintenance more often, but also manganese, from what I understand, it is the same problem. More velocity, quicker it builds up. So the bigger screen, the more surface areas and everything like that. The other maintenance for manganese is to frack it. With a bore, the water's always running into the bore. It's always coming in. So the direction of the flow is always the same way. So it pulls everything tighter and tighter, and even the iron bacteria are all pulled in this way. What I do is I seal off the top of the bore and pressurise it back the other way, so that now I'm pushing air back out. That tends to loosen up any of the stuff that's built up hard against the outside, freeze it up, and then we treat it with different chemicals. There's different areas handle different chemicals. Manganese is, again, it's just like the iron bacteria. The more often we treat it and more often we loosen it up and get it out of the hole, the more better off you're going to be. Especially manganese. It's once it gets in, it's virtually the end.
So either of those things, whatever bad stuff is in our water that's causing a problem, we really need to look at the maintenance program and do it as regularly as needed. But get some indicators, like that's a reduction in flow is a good one. The other one, of course, is the thing around the sub monitor, to be able to fail safe that it doesn't burn out because it overheats, which is a killer for us.
Exactly. And you don't want to be changing motors all the time. And look, I know where there's submersible motors in that have been in for 20 and 30 years and never been out. Again, it's all about water quality.
Good quality water.